Welcome to another edition of CAP at Home live projects. I'll be your instructor for the next 30 minutes. My name is Vanessa. You can call me Miss Van. This is a super fun project I've been experimenting with for the past few days. We are going to make salt dough Suncatchers, and I have a few that I've made. You can make them with a combination of a few materials. Of course, we use the salt dough for like the sturdy frame, and then you can use either clear pony beads, glitter glue, glow-in-the-dark glue, or just like regular school glue, and then you can add your own color with food coloring. So these are just kind of some of the different ones that I made. This one is just glue. This one is a combination of glue and beads, and this one is just beads. And as you can see, based on the bake time, this is like 10 to 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, and then the one with just the beads is about 35 to 40 minutes in the oven at 350 degrees. And you can make a bunch of different shapes. This is a star I made. And this is really cool because it holds the different sort of colors in a little like frame design. This is kind of like an eye or like a peacock feather. And then I have some that I will pull out of the oven in a short while that are even more like kind of wacky shapes that I just kind of came up with today. I don't know what this is, but it's cool. So I pre-mixed my salt dough recipe for this project just because the decorating process is a little bit more in depth. But you can find the recipe in the comment section and in my previous videos. I mixed this about 2 days ago, so I'm going to have to knead some more flour into it. And for this project, you're going to want to work directly on the cookie sheet. I know in my other videos I make my object on the surface and then transfer it to the cookie sheet, but because there's like a lot of liquid and moving parts, you're just going to want to work directly on the cookie sheet for this guy, this one. So I'm going to get a little bit more flour just to kind of sprinkle onto the work surface here, just a little bit, because after it sits it did get a little bit soggier. So I'm just going to dive right in. I'm going to start off with a few just kind of small pieces, and this did get kind of sticky while it sat in the bag, so I'm going to just kind of roll it in some more flour and just kind of work it together so it's not sticky anymore. The one thing I like about kind of making the dough ahead of time is that it's a lot more pliable. You have more time to make sure the consistency is like the consistency you want to work with. So I'm just going to roll out a shape here of like a coil here, and then I'm going to just make a funky shape on the cutting board. It doesn't really have to be anything in particular. This one's going to be like kind of a fun spiral pattern. And then I did a couple of different methods to make the hole for the string, but the one that I like best is actually just to add like a little bit of the salt dough on the top, and you can take a pencil. You're going to need a pencil and a toothpick just to kind of like make sure that the glues are even in your shape. So I'm going to take this pencil, and I'm actually going to use the eraser. This eraser is kind of dried out anyway, so I'm just going to like make a little hole here, and then this is going to be what I hang the string through later, and you can kind of just like sharpen up the edges of the inside of the hole with like the pencil tip of the pencil. I have an extra cup here for a little bit of glue because I buy my white school glue in bulk. Trust me, I go through it. So I'm just going to pour a little bit in here, and you don't want very much because the thicker the glue is, the longer it takes for it to cure. even in the oven, even at 350 degrees, it still takes a while. So I'm just going to use the toothpick here and just kind of spread it around. I'm probably going to have to add a little bit more, but this just kind of gets you started. Make sure you get all the way to the edge, because like the beads will hold their shape, but especially the glue, like if it doesn't go all the way to the edge and you have holes, like too many like big holes, it's not going to stick to the salt dough later. So I'm just going to pour a little bit more in here. And you don't need much, just enough to sort of cover the wax paper. And so I've got some food coloring here, and I'm just gonna like drop a very tiny amount of food coloring into the glue in just a moment, just to get some like fun sort of like effects. And I'm actually gonna mix some of the other kinds of glue into this, like, it does kind of dry kind of white color, but you can still see a lot of light through it. I'm gonna add some of the glow in the dark glue just because it's kind of fun. So I'm gonna add this glow in the dark glue. It's all Elmer's brand, so it does kind of blend together pretty well. I'm just gonna add into the edge there. And I'm still gonna have to just make sure that it gets into the edges of the frame. And it's just kind of fun. I'm just gonna like kind of drag it to make these kind of interesting peaks. And then I'm going to take my food coloring and I'm going to go with the blue. And I only really need like one tiny little drop of food coloring. Yeah, that is going to be plenty. And you just kind of mix it. And like, you don't really want to mix it too thoroughly because this cool like marbleization happens, and it's just kind of a fun aspect of this project. So I'm gonna just kind of work it, and I'm gonna leave it like that. So this one is done, and I'm gonna set my toothpick off to the side. The next one I'm gonna do like a combination of beads and glue. And these are cool. You can kind of hang them in the window. You can use them as Christmas tree ornaments. They make great gifts. Great. You can make pretty much any shape. I made some like cool heart and star shapes earlier, but I'm just gonna go with something a little bit more simple because I think the funnest aspect is just to kind of put it all together. And then I had some extra time, so I actually separated all of my pony beads out by color and stuck them to the masking tape. It just kind of makes it easy if you want to get into like a super detailed pattern. But I'm just gonna add a few different colors together, and they will sort of melt and fuse together, but you do still want it to be pretty full. So I'm just going to do like some hot pink and some medium pink and some clear and some purple, and just make just some fun light colors. And you do want the beads to kind of like come into contact with each other and like touch, so that when they fuse, they'll fuse together pretty evenly. And then since I'm going to use glue in this one, they can be spaced out a little bit actually. But when you do the one that's just, I guess this one will just be beads. Let's clean in there. I'm gonna do like nice solid row of green. Just because. Just make it a cool shape, kind of. And then I do have some other ones that I just made like in the last hour, and I can get those out and show them to you in a moment. So this one is just going to be like some pink. Alright, so that one's just going to be some like kind of random shape. And then this one, I'm going to do something a little bit more like intentional. I'm going to try to show you the star shape that I did as my example. Just add a little bit more flour. This is super fun to work with. And then it does kind of just stretch as you hold it. So you want to be pretty quick with your movements here, because at this point the dough is a little bit fragile. And then you want to make sure that it does come into contact with the coil of the dough here. It does come into contact with the paper at the bottom. And I'm just going to add a little drop right there, and that's going to be where I put my string in later. Cool. So that's kind of fun. And I'm going to add some of this glow-in-the-dark glue, and then I'm going to put some beads in. I'm going to take my toothpick and just kind of move the glue into the edges of each little shape in the middle of the star. And then some of the color will cook out, but it'll still glow. So at this point, your oven should be already preheating. And if you forgot, now is a good time to start it. You can also use a toaster oven. Those get plenty hot enough. All right. Cool. Now I'm just going to add some of this hot pink. And these are gonna be my Suncatchers. I think I'm gonna do one more here in the corner just because it looks like I still have a good amount of space. I kind of like to let the coil sort of inform itself as to what shape it's gonna be, but having like an intentional shape like the star is also pretty fun. But for this one, I'm just gonna do something kind of random because I've got some extra space, and I think the random one like this one is like, that one's my favorite. I have never made that exact shape before, so it's just kind of exciting. This one's going to be a little more spirally. I'm going to put a loop in the middle. I'm going to add another piece around here. And then I think this is going to be the top. So I'm just going to take a little lump like this. And I think I'm going to stick it right here. Which reminds me kind of like a rotary phone almost, if you remember what those are. And then I've got another little piece of clay here, so I'm going to add some right there. Alright, so this one I think I'm going to do another one that's just glue because I still have a bunch of my white school glue left in here. Take my toothpick again and just kind of guide the glue out of the cup. And just, you know, you have a lot of options just with the glue on its own and the food coloring. I saw some other suggestions for other, this one's going to be kind of thick, other like different materials you can use, and it's kind of like a fun study. So like plasticity is a word that describes not necessarily plastic things, but plastic is a verb as well, and it describes how like malleable or moldable an object is, how likely it is. Like the glue here is like a liquid and it's kind of free forming, but it does dry into a solid. So like the plasticity level of the fluid is like really high, whereas like something like cement or concrete dries super solid and is still plastic because it's moldable, but it's not as fluid as the glue. So those are just different kinds of words that you can use to describe materials. So I'm going to do green with this one. But this project kind of like is a study in plasticity because you have the plastic pony beads, which is like a thicker material, and therefore they take longer to melt to become liquid, whereas the glue is already a liquid and it takes a short relative amount of time to become a solid in the oven. So I'm just going to kind of swirl the green around and make some interesting shapes in the glue. And this one's going to be pretty thick, so it's going to take probably closer to 20 minutes to cure in the oven. But you get this kind of cool green and white pattern. And get some green in the middle there. And that is the end of this project. And I will show you the ones that I made earlier today in the last hour or so that came out of the oven while I switched these into the oven. And so you can kind of see how they look. some like kind of wackier shapes that I made. And you're gonna wanna peel the wax paper off the back. And some of it's gonna stay, but it's still relatively transparent. This is just kind of like a wacky heart shape I made. And then I used the glow-in-the-dark glue here, and then this is kind of like a red-orange food coloring and school glue combination. This is just kind of like a wacky shape I did with glitter glue and some beads. And this took about 20 minutes to cure in the oven. And then this one is all beads, and this one took about 45 minutes. And so I've got some string here that I'm just gonna string through. And while you're cooking these, if you have a vent or a window, it's a good idea to utilize those options. But you definitely want to remember the wax paper, because those will protect the surface of your baking tray or your cookie sheet. So that's kind of fun. This is sort of like a yin-yang pattern, and you can see the light through it. This one's just like kind of a wacky shape with beads and glitter glue. And you just take your little bit of string and you can hang it by a window, and you can have kind of like a stained glass effect. And it's pretty simple to do that. Kind of cool project at home. Also, if later you want to learn how to use like more materials to make stained glass, this is just kind of a cool introductory project for that like different sort of technique. But this is just a really cool Suncatcher project that you can do with materials and equipment you have at home. My tools were literally like a pencil and a toothpick for this project. So it's super simple. I did use scissors to pre-cut some yarn. But yeah, that's this project. And I really hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. And if you do a version of your own, please comment a photo in this post, and we'd love to see it. All right, see you next time.